Hello everyone, this is Kenta from Land Design. Today I want to introduce you to a pruning project I did on some garden trees. The tree I'm showcasing today is the Japanese Juniper you see behind me. This is after pruning, but what it looked like before pruning like this. Originally it had been pruned with our hedge technique, but this time I've used a thinning method to give it a much cleaner look. Let's start by looking at the tree before the pruning right away. This is what it looked like before pruning, and the place where it was planted is in front of the Japanese style room. It was large compared to the size of the garden, and the outline was clear, so it felt quite oppressive. Let's see the inner branches look. It's full of dead branches. Let me explain a little here. This tree was managed with hedge pruning method. I think it's easier to understand the hedge pruning by imagining something like clippers. Adjust the branches and leaves of the external contour to make the outline clear. This is a pruning method that hardens and shapes soft natural objects such as garden trees. I think it's easier to understand if you imagine the hairstyles. If the hairstyles changing from medium or short to haircut with clippers will tend to look clear outline and a little stiffer than before the cut. I think it would be suitable for Zen temples, etc., but I think it would be a bit not suitable pruning for residential. So why is it full of dead branches like this? If cut off the branches and leaves in the middle, they will budding new branch from there, so branch has the characteristic of increasing. In addition, this tree was managed with shallow hedge pruning, so the branches increased, doubled and doubled. As the outer branches and leaves grow, they block sunlight from reaching the inner branches, causing them to die off like this. I was able to see what it looked like before pruning, so I would like to move on to the work. I will be working from the top, so first I will use a step ladder to climb up. Now that we have reached the top, I would like to check the branches and leaves. The upper branches received more sunlight, so they were more crowded than the lower branches. What am I checking here? I am looking at how far we can cut back the branches and leaves, because the same goes for the width when viewed from below, but it was tall and felt oppressive compared to the size of the garden, so I wanted to cut it back as much as possible to make it smaller. Some of you may be thinking, why don't you just cut it to whatever height you want? But this Japanese juniper is a coniferous tree, so basically if you cut it where there are no leaves, it will wither without budding. So I check how far I can cut back the branches. In the case of this branch, I think it will be around this. Next is this. Can you see where some of the leaves look different? This condition is called throwback phenomenon of reverting to branches before variety improvement. And once this happens, I don't think it will ever return to its original. When I cut it before the position shown earlier and it sprouts, this often happens when you try to cut it deeply using hedge pruning. Please rest assured that this will not happen if you manage it normally. Now, I would like to start pruning. push through branches like this and check the source of the branch while cutting it back to the possible. In the case of plants like this tree, which are to be admired as a tailored or single tree, it is said that if the upper branches and leaves are thinner and the lower parts are many, the balance of light and overall weight will be most beautiful. This time I thinned out most of the branches and cut back, so I think there will be more branches and leaves the next time they bud. So, as I manage it next year and the year after, I would like to gradually move from shorten cut to thinning cut and make the shapes of the branches and leaves more beautiful. This time I had to cut a lot of thick branches, so I used small shears. As the tree management progresses, it will no longer be necessary to cut thick branches, so I plan to transition to thin-tipped, double-edged shears. For example, scissors like this. In this way, I may think about whether to cut on the right or left side. Pruning may seem like repeating the same work, but there are involves repeated decisions situation. Therefore, even if two gardeners who are experts in pruning the same tree, I think they will get different impressions each other. It can't increase the number of branches and leaves other than over time. Basically, I think it's similar to sculpting, as it's a process of making judgments about existing branches and leaves based on one's own sensitivity and eliminating waste. Next is the part that is lower than the top. It feels good to be able to cut back deeply. It is most desirable pruning. If I can prune by swapping the branch, I just cut with the branch in front like this. Work has progressed, but it's not even half done yet. The pruned areas on the inside look much cleaner. In areas where no pruning was yet, fallen leaves piled up and turned into soil. This is the first time repruning it, so it's still in the rough stage where I've only pruning roughly, but the difference between it and the parts that haven't been touched is obvious. And also carefully remove small dead branches. By doing this, it can clearly see the characteristic branches of this tree. This is what the comparison looks like. Even small dead branches can look beautiful if removed. If you remove dead branches that look branched and leave them as a single branch, your eyes can easily follow it without getting lost, so it's easy to be appreciated. In the case of sound, it's like noise, so let's remove what's unnecessary and show what you want to show. When I looked at the removed branches, I found that they were long more than normal and had many dead branches, and many of them had only a few leaves on them like this. After that, I removed the branches with abundant leaves, so I would like to use this to introduce detailed pruning of branches. In the case of this tree, the leaves usually grow with the tips facing upwards like this. When pruning branches, check the branch shape from the side closest to the trunk. That's better, more efficient, and branches closer to the trunk are more important than the tips of the branches because they form the whole skeleton. The tips of the branches sprout and grow every year, so there are many opportunities to adjust them, so prioritize those that are closer to the trunk of the branch. First, I removed all the dead branches. After that, adjust the spacing between adjacent branches. Please refer to the illustration on the upper right for details. I think there is a lot of content like this on the internet and in books, so if you are interested, please look it up. In reality, I make decisions based on careful consideration of each tree species characteristic, individual differences, garden composition, etc., and then make decisions, but content is maniacal, and unless the listener has some knowledge and experience, it will not be possible to convey it well, so I will omit it this time. After adjusting the spacing between adjacent branches, pinch the outline of the branch tips a little to adjust them. I think the shape of the branch tips is most beautiful when they are natural, so I keep in mind to cut them too much. The more work you do with pruning, the more artificial the design becomes, so I try to adjust how much artificial design I want to give depending on the situation. Roughly pruning, it ended up looking like this. How do you feel when you compare them? I will do this work to whole tree also. Since the work involved going inside like this, I think it was a plain work from the perspective of those around me. After that, it started raining, so I cancelled the work for that day and went home. I had made a lot of progress with yesterday's work, but there was still a little bit left on the back and top, so I continued the work in the same way. The inside of the lower branches have withered, so I don't think they will sprout again. After that, I worked on it and finished most of the work. So I would like to clean cut branches up and then make adjustments. When cleaning up, I collect them on sheets and transport them like this. This pruning was in conjunction with garden renovation work in the main garden. In construction, we moved the plants and garden stones in a complex manner. We decided that this garden tree would be fine in its current position, so we are pruning it without transplanting it. The condition of the branches and leaves is a detailed matter, so where the plants are placed in garden is more important. In this video, I am talking about pruning a single tree, but unless you're dealing with a very small garden or a specific arrangement of a single tree and rock, it's important to consider the overall garden maintenance rather than just focusing on individual trees. Now, I would like to end the video by looking at the finished